The Starr and D'Amico Show is brought to you by cheapesttshirts.ca. If you're looking for quality gear without overpaying, shop cheapesttshirts.ca. Huge selection for men, women, and kids. Tees, hoodies, headwear, bags, and more. Proud Montreal business. Order today, ship today, delivery tomorrow. That's cheapesttshirts.ca. Local, fast, and affordable. Brought to you by instacustoms.com. Do you need custom gear from a local Montreal business? Instacustoms.com has you covered. Custom shirts, hoodies, hats, and more made your way. Fast turnaround, great quality, and proudly Montreal-based. Check out instacustoms.com. Brought to you by Cabletel. For trusted alarm systems in Quebec and Eastern Ontario, choose Cabletel. Over 20 years of expert installation and top-tier protection for homes and businesses. Check out Cabletel.com. Email them info@Cabletel.com. It's Cabletel. Peace of mind you can count on. Brought to you by Morella's Steakhouse. Looking for an unforgettable night out? Morella's Steakhouse on Highway 132. It's just 15 minutes from Montreal, serving up premium cuts and bold flavors, and no tax on your bill. Book your table tonight at morellassteakhouse.ca. Taste excellence tonight. Brought to you by Little Bear Pet Store. Give your pet the best with Little Bear. Online, littlebearonline.com. A family-owned business in Montreal for 30 years. Chuck, Evie, and their amazing staff. Top brands, great prices, and real care for your pets. Shop online or visit them on St. Catherine across from Westmount Square. Brought to you by McLean's Pub. Head over to McLean's Pub, 1210 Peel Street in the heart of downtown Montreal. Great food, cold drinks, and big games on all the screens. Classic pub grub and an unbeatable vibe. McLean's Pub, good times and great company. With Marco D'Amico with RG Media, I'm Shaun Starr. Thanks so much for being with us on youtube.com. You can always hit like and subscribe. And don't forget, you can find the audio version of this show on all your favorite podcast platforms like iHeartRadio. Marco, there are 2 days circled on the calendar for NHL and Montreal Canadian fans of note. February 4th, 2 days before the start of the Winter Olympic Games in Milan and Cortina. And then, of course, the March 6th NHL trade deadline. We've covered the activity around the National Hockey League with certain teams starting to make maneuvers. We've talked about the Vancouver Canucks. We've talked about the Calgary Flames. And now let's expand our view on that as it relates to the Montreal Canadiens. Let's talk about viable, not fantasy land, hfboards.com trade reports. Is there today, can we talk about a likely candidate that the Montreal Canadiens and their management team can identify in this league, and we can put two and two together and not be surprised if these two teams and Montreal being half of that equation can come to some sort of deal here?
Well, I think we've been talking about the St. Louis Blues forever.
Yeah.
So St. Louis, I mean, this is a team that's going to be looking to retool, is going to be looking to get younger. And Montreal has pieces that they would want, depending on the player that they're looking at. That'd be Jordan Kyrou, Braden Shen, Robert Thomas, Colton Parayko, like you name it. If the Canadiens really did feel like it was time to pull the trigger, that's a team 100% all day, every day since the beginning of the summer that I could see them being linked to. But that's an easy answer. One of the teams of late that I think could make some sense, though, would be the Columbus Blue Jackets.
Oh,
And I think there's a little bit more steam in that regard. You know, I'm not going to link them officially in terms of a specific player because then, you know, trade rumors start and whatnot.
yeah.
But I would think that right now, from what I'm hearing out of Columbus, you know, they're also, yes, they made the move to get Rick Bowness in, and it's helped them to a degree, yes. But at the same time, you know, the team is still a ways out of a playoff spot at the moment of this recording. You know, they're looking to kind of maybe shake things up. They're second to last in the Metropolitan only because the New York Rangers decided to nosedive.
Hmm.
You know, a lot of, you know, things to look into. But with all this said, they're only 4 points out of a playoff spot in the Metropolitan because the Islanders only have 59 points in 51 games. So there is an opening there just because of how open that division is. That being said, you know, there is an excess right now when it comes to this to the Columbus Blue Jackets. And if you go and look at their roster, it's definitely going to be on the wings. You look at guys like Marchenko, Voronkov, the way that he's currently being used right now, Kent Johnson, Boone Jenner is being used on the wing. So there is definitely, you know, an opportunity. Voronkov, as of last game, was being used on the fourth line. He's got 17 goals.
Yeah.
He's a big boy, right? So it leads me to believe that if the Canadiens wanted to add either skill or size, so skill being like a Kent Johnson style, or size in the realm of a player like Voronkov that could score, there is opportunity there. And the St. Louis Blues, the Columbus Blue Jackets are looking to maybe shake things up without, performing surgery on the core, maybe shake things up to change things around, because as it stands right now, their top six is good-ish, but I feel like ideally, if they do stay in a seller's scenario, maybe Boone Jenner is traded and their top six for the future kind of unsure, especially with the fact that Caden Lundstrom isn't really kind of performing to expectations, former fourth overall pick. So they got to be ready for the eventuality of what comes next. And I think with that said, Montreal has options in that regard. We'll see what the asks are, but again, I've seen Columbus around, and I know that Montreal has been scouting Columbus games in the past, recent past. So a team to keep an eye on for sure. That is one. The other are the Calgary Flames. And I know a lot of people are going to roll their eyes. We've been talking about this all season, but there remains interest in a player like Nazem Kadri. And one of the reasons for that is not necessarily just because he could play center, but because he could be that physical presence. He's a guy that you could use to really kind of drive home the point in the playoffs, right? And I think that kind of profile, not necessarily him, because we could talk about the fit with Nazem Kadri. The contract doesn't scare me if there's retention involved, but then what's the cost? But I would just say, like, the Calgary Flames, with some of the pieces that they have, also an attractive player for the Montreal Canadiens in the short run, just because that's a team that is headed towards whatever you want to call it, retool, rebuild, reset. I don't care, but they're heading towards that, whether they like it or not. And some players are going to be put, up to be traded. I think Nazem Kadri has to be one of them.
As we sit here and speculate and wonder about, viable trade partners for Kent Hughes and his management team ahead of these, whether it's February 4th, they get something done, in the 2-week window, or they get something done in the days leading up to the March 6th NHL trade deadline. How important should the age be for, this market and the fans of the Montreal Canadiens when it comes to, Voronkov, for example, is 25, right? To contrast that, we're talking about Boone Jenner and what is he, 32? Nazem Kadri, older than that. How important is that to factor in based on what we think Ken Hughes is willing to do in terms to bolster his team? Like, we've spoken repeatedly about, it doesn't seem likely that they would go for a glorified rental. I'm not saying Kadri would be. He's got a lot of term left, right? But like that player that has a year and a half left on his contract, but that's like 32, 33 years old. I mean, how likely would that be? And let's talk about the age in order to put two and two together, right?
Well, I mean, they did that with Phil Deneau. But I feel like, first of all, number one, I wouldn't expect the Canadiens to be on a rental at all, unless that player came with an extension. So not a rental. So I don't think that's happening. We talked about Kiefer Sherwood. The Canadiens were interested, but they were not interested in his contract. So that made the deal dead. When you look at what they're looking for right now, they're looking for players that are somewhat age appropriate, but that have a certain level of experience now in the NHL. Like, I think they're done with the reclamation projects that we've seen in the past. They're very much looking for a hockey deal. Like, I'll tell you right now, they're looking for a hockey deal. They're looking for something that makes sense for them now and, for the next couple of years. From what I've been told, from what I've been hearing, it's all about how can they better surround their core and bring in a piece that's going to help them elevate in other areas. So they did that in Phil Deneau. Like, they've significantly improved in the face-off circle. He's already been clutch in terms of going to get them some key face-off wins and points, in the last month since being acquired. So there are options, for the Canadiens to improve. I think we all know this. whether it be a bona fide number 2 center, whether it be a competitive, because it's not necessarily just size, but competitive, top 6 forward that could potentially complete the top line. There are options there, and I feel like we talked about Voronkov before. I think that would be a player, again, 6'5", on pace for 20, 25, 26 goals right now, and a good, shoots left but plays the right wing, like it's the opposite of Cole Caulfield. So it's, to me, I think there's a good fit there, but Kent Johnson in Columbus is one that definitely makes sense. Blake Coleman in Calgary is definitely one that makes sense. And a team that on paper would make for a really good trade partner would be the New York Rangers.
Yes,
and I know a lot of people, colleague Eric Engels pointed out, the very obvious that Will Cooley would be the perfect player to acquire given age, style, and familiarity with Jeff Gorton. It's just, he brings that smash mouth power forward style, and he could grow with this team and play in a top 6 setting. The only issue is that, unfortunately, the Rangers and the Montreal Canadiens, because of the way things went down with Jeff Gorton when he left the Rangers, 6 years ago, it's not, it doesn't bode well for a trade to go down between the two teams. So normally you would say, hey, that makes sense. But unfortunately, I think you'd have to cross off the Rangers in that list. So where does that leave you? Where does that leave you in the league in terms of potential teams that the Canadiens could trade with that would make sense? And we've covered the Blues, we've covered the Calgary Flames. I don't think the Rangers make sense. We've spoken about the Nashville Predators. The Predators have been making a little bit of a run of late. Steven Stamkos has taken off. But, when you look at hockey trades, when you're looking at teams that are wanting to make trades where they would be able to improve quickly, Nashville is one of those teams. Nashville is a team that, if they're going to trade players, they don't want just picks. They want prospects. They want to be able to turn this around quickly. Barry Trotz isn't in the business of doing a rebuild. I could tell you this right now. So that's a team. If you're looking for a Ryan O'Reilly, if you're looking for a rejuvenated Steven Stamkos, should his desire be to waive his no trade, that's a team to look for. But again, I just feel like when it comes to the Predators, it makes more sense for a contender to be looking at them specifically, as opposed to a team like Montreal that's looking to get into their window, right? And to me, the team that makes the most amount of sense in terms of trying to make a trade and potentially signing that player is the Seattle Kraken.
Mm. Well, some of the reporting from this past weekend, there were rumors flying towards the end of last week and then carried into the weekend. And I think it added more credibility to the infamous stare down on the draft floor of Shane Wright. And that, I think it was Elliot Friedman pointing out that, more or less addressing those rumors and then kind of backing it up in regards to, no, he's very much in play. And like, whether we talk about a guy like Voronkov, whether we talk about someone like Shane Wright, or, maybe looking at the consistent pattern of a team like St. Louis, whether you're looking at a Jordan Kyrou or Robert Thomas, and then now we can tie in Shane Wright in Seattle, right? It's going to cost. And I just wonder, and I'll bring this question back up, maybe months after I first asked it. Have things changed in the competitive landscape or in the eyes of Kent Hughes and Jeff Gorton that you want some of these young potential studs? You're going to have to give up a young potential stud going the other way. You're not giving up a Patrick Laine in this hypothetical for a Shane Wright. I just wonder if there's more flexibility from the management here in Montreal.
I don't think the Canadiens will go for Shane Wright. That's not the player I'd be talking about when I'm talking about the Seattle Kraken. The player that I would be looking at is Jared McCann.
Yeah. Okay, we've heard that name before, yeah.
But I think the fit is very obvious. First of all, if you can get him with an extension, you're flying if you're the Montreal Canadiens, because he's in the right age bracket. He's 29 years old, will turn 30 exactly, at the end of May. But this is a guy, again, basically on pace for about half a goal per game, right? So you're
Yeah.
looking at a player that's close to a point per game on a team devoid of offense, plays the gritty game, but goes to the net, always nets you about 20 to 30 goals a season on average. So this is a guy I feel like a left shot, can play center, can play left wing, probably flip him on the right if you want to as well. Just a guy that's able to complete plays. And I feel like right now that's where the Canadians are really truly missing is you look at their special teams, you look at the way that the dynamics of their offensive game, a lot of playmakers, few finishers, few true finishers. And I feel like that's what you're missing is a left shot snipe like finisher. And I feel like that's where McCann fits in. And, he's got enough playoff experience. He's got 20 games of playoff experience, but he's got 700 games of NHL experience. This is a guy that you can bring in and would be able to kind of fit in well, in my opinion. I just, the Kraken aren't trading Beniers. They're not trading. Well, I don't think they can trade Stevenson right now. They're not going to be trading any of the younger guys. So if you're looking for a guy that makes sense, McCann probably makes sense. And I think if you're the Montreal Canadiens, if you can secure that extension, that's an out of the box hockey trade that you can make that will ultimately help round out the team, right? And so this is what you're kind of looking for is how do you round out this team? If the idea is that that Michael Hage joins this team down the stretch, potentially tried as a 2C, once he's out of college, then your most pressing need would probably be to fill, give yourself options to fill the right wing slot with a left shot. Well, then that's where guys like Voronkov, Ken Johnson, you look at Nazem Kadri could probably bump somebody else to the wing. You look at a player like Blake Holman could probably fit there. He's done that before. Jordan Kyrou fits that mold as well. If we're talking about players that not necessarily play tough, but play with compete. I think that, when you saw him again on Saturday night, just a beautiful goal, being able to beat players with speed. What does that price look like considering his full no trade clause? Like there are names out there that the Canadians would be able to look at, but it ultimately comes down to fit. There's two major areas of need today that need to be addressed either internally or via trade. And that is top line right wing, and that is number 2 center. And once that happens, the Canadians, that it be internal. Like if they feel like either Kapanen or Michael Hage are the number 2 center of the future, fine. But then you have to address who's going to be playing on that top line long term if the idea is to have Slafkovsky on the second. And so this is why I believe a hockey trade for a player that could be versatile, that could play left, right, potentially even center is probably where the Canadians are at here when it comes to trying to find a player to add. But they're not going to do so in an arms race. As we know with the Montreal Canadiens, they're looking for the exact right precision point and the right opportunity.
I could just hear Habs Nation. You talk about the 2 area of his need. Actually, it's 3. Goaltending. I know there's somebody in the audience. I know probably more than one. But we'll save that topic for another day. Marco D'Amico with RG Media. Follow him on all your favorite socials at MN D'Amico. And of course, right here, one half of Starr and D'Amico. Follow us and subscribe to our YouTube channel on youtube.com. Just search for the Starr and D'Amico Show. Marco, thank you.
Always a pleasure, guys.